It's time to rebuild the forks. I've got a Pivot Works rebuild kit here and the proper tools to actually pull the forks apart and put them back together. So I've got it in the vise and some soft jaws so I don't scratch the tubes, and I'll take the cap off and get started. As you saw in the previous clip, I was trying to use this 6-point socket to get the dampening adjuster out, and it actually rounded off. Wasn't quite sure what to do, so I went down to the store and grabbed one of these bolt extractor sockets, and that thing worked. So I thought I was gonna have to get a whole new set of forks, or at least one fork leg, but luckily I got it out. Probably just gonna have to get a new one of these dampening adjusters now. The worst part is I actually threw the crashed bike's forks out, which I'm sure, even though the crashed bike's forks were bent, I'm sure this adjuster nut would have actually been okay. So that serves me right for throwing things out before I'm done the project. Now I need to take the bushings and the O-rings off this thing and see if I can match them up and see if I can find actual which ones they are in this kit that I've got. The fork sliders have these like really minimal scratches. You can't quite feel them, but they're just apparent enough that I'm gonna need to do something about it. So it's obviously not the cross hatching you can see, it's these long, kind of really faint scratches. It's not a reflection, it is a little scratch. They only run about half the length of the slider, but I'm just gonna get some 1200 grit sandpaper and turn it in the drill here and kind of go up and down. And that's going to keep that cross-hatching pattern in it. It might dull it a little bit, but it's still going to seal just fine. It's a few weeks later and I've managed to source a replacement dampening adjuster to replace the one I destroyed trying to remove when I started the rebuild. So I'm gonna throw that back on, throw the new one on, fill the outer chamber with oil because the inner chamber is already done. Got the dampening side of the fork done, so now it's time to rebuild the spring side. well, that's the forks done. It was actually a lot less scary once you're doing it. And I thought the air spring side would be a lot harder than the dampening side, but that's actually not the case at all. This is actually a lot more simple than this side. So if you can do your standard, this is just your standard fork. It just doesn't have the spring in it, because that's what this side does. It does the spring, but with air. So this is actually a lot simpler. There's no spring in it. This side just does all the dampening, and there's usually would be a spring in that, but there's not. So it's even simpler. So these forks are actually super simple to rebuild. You do need some special tools. Obviously you need this for the dampening adjuster. Well, it's not really the dampening adjuster, but it's the negative air pressure adjuster down the bottom. It has to clear the valve stem. So you need a special tool to do that. Obviously a 50mm ring spanner to take the top off. And instead of getting a valve seal driver, just get some 50mm PVC pipe. That works just fine. And just cut it in half and use that to ram it down. The forks are done. I'm back on the bike. I love how the gold fork legs contrast with the black triple clamps. Don't worry about the red stem nut. I bought that before I changed my mind. So I'm still going with the gold theme. I haven't changed my mind again. I just got to replace this with a black one.